And we have government officials, political figures, owning concessions, because they wouldn't be allowed to go do the mining as political figures. They would rather pass the back door. And some of these small-scale illegal miners you see on the concessions have big men behind them. So then it becomes very difficult to fight the miners.
Ghana is blessed with beauty, mighty rivers, rich forests, and mineral wealth. But beneath that beauty, a silent crisis is unfolding. The lakes are turning toxic, forests are disappearing, and the very communities that depend on these resources are being left to suffer in silence. Hello and welcome to another episode of On Rights, Crime and Justice, coming to you from Green Growth TV. Today, we want to take a poll back on the cutting on some of the crimes being committed, not just against nature, but against the people of Ghana in various communities, from illegal mining, pollution, to especially of the Volta Lake, to unchecked stone quarrying, tearing through communities. We ask the hard questions of how did we get here, and most importantly, what must be done or what can be done to stop it. Joining me to unpack this discussion is John Obuaba, Executive Director, Selda Foundation in Ghana. Thank you so much for joining us, John. How are you doing today?
Hi, Grace. I'm doing fine. And yourself?
I'm very well, thank you. So let's kick off on the conversation. We'll start off with the issue of pollution in the Volta Lake. I know that it has been happening for quite some time now. And I just want you to, first of all, provide an overview of the current situation. And first of all, how did the pollution begin and what is the present condition of that lake, especially for the communities that are relying on the lake? Have there been compensation or remediation efforts for the people around? Just bring us up to speed on the situation with the Volta Lake currently.
Okay, thank you very much. If I may start, the Volta Lake is one of the lakes of international importance. And in Ghana, our hydroelectric power generation comes from the Volta Lake. And this lake was established in 1966. Since then, the country's electricity supply has hugely depended on this lake. However, a lot of communities live along this lake. And even prior to the establishment of the lake in 1966, government then needed to even relocate some communities because of the construction of the dam. So for those communities, they've been compensated already. Okay. So government got new sites where they relocated the communities that were affected by the lake, and they were compensated in terms of farmlands, because most of the communities living along the lake are farming communities, agrarian communities. So government, as part of their relocation plan, when they give you an accommodation, they add a farmland to it for you. So those were done already. However, as the years go by, one of the findings is that the communities that still live around the lake have been polluting the lake as a result of their activities. And most of the activities around the lake are farming, fishing, and hotels and restaurants that locate around the Volta Lake. So it has also come to the notice of government that some of these farmers or some of these fisher folks who still farm on the lake use toxic chemicals in catching their fishes. And there are some fishing companies, aquaculture companies that have located on the lake, and the process of the fishing or their farming itself produces chemicals into the lake. So this lake is being polluted by these activities. For the restaurants and the communities that live along the lake, also channel some of their waste liquids or wastewater into the lake. So it has become a very serious affair where we even have some grasses germinating on the lake, blocking the flow of the water. Most gutters, drains from the nearby communities have been constructed into the lake. So the lake now becomes a residue of waste materials, which has to be so. So protection of the lake has become a serious issue, most especially with the communities that live around the lake. And most of the communities, like I said, they are fisher folks who always go to fishing and come. They use toxic chemicals in their fishing activities. The aquaculture companies on the water are also using materials or chemicals in, breeding their fishes that becomes toxic to the water. And the households and restaurants and then the recreational centers that are located around the water also channel their waste products into the water. So the lake, as we knew in 1966, is not that now. A lot of pollution is happening in the lake.
Okay, so from what I hear you saying, the reason why this lake is being polluted is as a result of activities of the host communities. It's not like, oh, we have external companies coming and doing this. So it's as a result of the people that actually live there, if I get you correctly. So is there anything that, do you think that this is happening because the people there are simply ignorant of the result of their activities? What has the government done about this? So looking at this situation, would you say that most of the people in those communities, and even if you look at it in general communities in Ghana generally, would you say that they are not as aware as when it comes to issues of environmental pollution and all of that? How self-aware are they, or are they just ignorant and they don't care? How would you assess that, looking at the fact that this is actually caused by the people who live there?
Thank you very much. If you look at the demography of those communities that live along the water, low level of education, most of those communities are ignorant, are not aware about issues of environmental protection. Most of those communities don't even know that they need to protect the water because that is their source of livelihood.
Yeah.
So then you, a fisherman, will not use toxic chemicals on the water because you destroy the biodiversity of the water. And so ignorance is one major issue. And it's also as a result of the fact that most of those communities, high rates of illiteracy and education awareness about environmental issues is not, it has not gone down well with those communities. High level of poverty around those communities. However, the authority that's in charge of the power generation, which is the Volta River Authority, which generates the hydroelectric power for the nation, has a department called the Environment Department that is supposed to protect the lake in terms of issues of this pollution, and then making sure that there is a protected area always around the water body that is not being interfered by human activities. So at a point, they've been trying, the Environment Department of the Volta River Authority has been trying engaging rural communities, creating some form of awareness, trying to create some buffer around the lake, the water body, so that it doesn't get interfered with human activities. But it is not enough. We still see many communities polluting the water body. I think government also have the Environmental Protection Agency that is also that has a sole mandate of advising the government, initiating policies that seeks to protect the environment, especially around the water body that serves as a source of hydroelectric power generation for the nation. So government have been trying, but still there is a gap in terms of education, in terms of awareness raising, in terms of providing alternative livelihood for those communities, so that they are not able, they don't get interfere with the water body. And you can see that day in, day out, the pollution is as a result of human activity, livelihood, the quest for livelihoods. And that is what is polluting the water body. So upstream, the northern part of Ghana to the southern part of Ghana, where this water flows, this is a common phenomenon around the water body. Even, there are farmers that have their farms close to the water body because they use the water body for their farming activities. And trust me, most of these farmers use agrochemicals that are dangerous to the species. So it's about awareness raising, it's about law enforcement, it's about providing alternative livelihoods for people around the water body so that we can have the water body protected.
All right, thank you so much for that insights, John. Now let's go talk a bit on the issue of illegal small-scale mining, which has also become rampant and highly technical in many regions of Ghana. First of all, how did this situation blow up to how it is now? How did we get here, and why does it seem so hard for the government to enforce existing laws that they have to be able to curb this particular issue?
Thank you very much for this. For illegal mining in Ghana, it's becoming a nuisance to our national security. Governments have tried to fight this. But you see, fighting illegal mining in Ghana must be delineated from political activities. You see, when governments try to politicize the fight of illegal mining, and that has been one of our challenges, because there has been government political interference in fighting the illegal mining. Now, why do people go mine illegally? Because there is regulation in Ghana that when you want to go into small-scale mining in itself is not illegal in Ghana. But we have illegal small-scale mining, where these miners don't go for certification before they go into the mining sites. Once you go in for certification, you must abide by some environmental principles, some modalities that you need to follow in your mining activities. But for the illegal miners, because they don't go for licensing, they just go and, tamper with the environment the way they like it. It borders on poverty and livelihoods of people. So when trying to fight illegal mining, you must also connect it with, livelihoods of the people. And when you want to derail a livelihood of people that they have depended on for years, and you're just stopping it, they will fight you back, because that is the livelihood of the people. So I think an integrated approach to fighting small-scale illegal mining, it's what government needs to prioritize. Once you ask people to leave the mining sites, you must think about the livelihoods of the people. Otherwise, they will fight you. Otherwise, they will bounce back, because that is their source of livelihood. So I think a national conversation around how we approach this whole illegal, small-scale illegal mining is and we must not interfere it with politics or political interference. And we have government officials, political figures, owning concessions, because they wouldn't be allowed to go do the mining as political figures. They would rather pass the back door. And some of these small-scale illegal miners you see on the concessions have big men behind them. Some in government, some in political spaces. So then it becomes very difficult to fight the miners. For those working on the concessions are working because of livelihoods. But the big figures behind them are just making profit out of it. So it is a mix of issues that when we want to approach this issue, we must look at. So we've been struggling with fighting small-scale illegal mining in Ghana now. And it is polluting our water bodies. In fact, some of our water bodies have been polluted. And like you know, it takes several years for those water bodies to regenerate. Now there are health implications. People are developing different health conditions from these mining communities. And it is getting to a point where now it's becoming a national security issue. And we need a national conversation around this to be able to bring it down. Thank you.
All right. So yeah, you've pointed, of course, like you said, this is it's becoming an issue, and because even aside the illegal one, of course, there we do have the ones that are legal, and you know, in the host communities, a lot of quarrying activities in Ghana. So, but now I don't know if you live around those communities, you probably don't, but I mean, you're on ground, so you probably see what they go through, and what exactly do these communities that you know, mining takes place in, that are impacted by the activities of mining, what exactly do they want to be done differently? What are they asking these entities to do for them? Do they want them to leave completely, or to be compensated, or at least you want them, the mining entities, to take a different approach? The host communities where this mining takes place, what exactly are they looking for?
Okay, so we have multinational companies, for instance, like Anglo-Gold, Ashanti, Newmont, who are international mining companies. For them, when they come to the community, they support the community in so many ways. They provide social responsibilities. Some invest in healthcare facilities for the communities. Some invest in a provision of water for the communities. Some invest in road infrastructure. Some even invest in scholarship, educational scholarship schemes for the communities. Now, the indigents who work in those communities, I think for them, their greatest issue, because for years and the nation has had this conversation about small-scale illegal mining. The affected households constantly talks about issues of livelihoods. And that is what is causing them to go in there and do the mining illegally. But you know, those activities are happening on the land.
I don't know if you can hear me, John. I think we lost you.
Okay. So I'm saying that there are a lot of invisible hands in the process. So any attempt to, solve or resolve the issues of illegal mining, or stop the issues of illegal mining, you must be able to identify all these invisible hands. Yes. Sorry.
Yeah, I think you're back now. Yes, I can hear you now.
Okay. So what I was saying is that you must be able to identify all the invisible hands within the process before you can design any successful or implementable anti-galamsey, like we normally call it. We call small-scale mining galamsey. Anti-galamsey intervention in Ghana. You need to do a multi-stakeholder approach. When you are targeting only the workers, those you see doing the mining on the field, you are handling just an aspect of the problem. Because we have the financiers of these guys. We have the landowners on which these gold deposits are, and we have people within the chain in government who facilitate this process for them. So it is a multi-stakeholder approach. But when you go and you're just fighting the guys you see on the farm, you seize their equipment, you seize their resources, you are just surface dressing the problem. You are not looking at the root cause of the problem. Fortunately for us as a nation, our current government and the president of the country is showing a lot of commitment towards, looking at the root cause of all this problem. And one of their policy prescriptions is that no official in government should be involved in small-scale illegal mining. That is one. Two, they are trying to review all the licensing regime and the licensing process of mining companies in the country so that there is some form of compliance to environmental security, environmental safety measures for these mining companies. Now, for the small-scale miners, a regime where we are going to ensure that all small-scale miners are brought within the limelight and formalize the process so that they can be regulated and they can follow the environmental measures so that the environment is safe for us as a nation. So these are some policy prescriptions that the current government is trying to put in place to fight this whole issue of galamsey. But I must say that our knowledge working in rural communities, in implementing interventions in some of these small-scale mining communities, one of the biggest challenge to fighting this galamsey in Ghana is the fact that government officials are involved in the chain. And so those who are supposed to be implementing and enforcing the law are rather those who are involved, but invisibly. And this has been the challenge of fighting galamsey in Ghana. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jonah. Very deep insights there. We'll take a pause on the conversation now, and when we come back, we'll look into other pressing issues in Ghana. We'll go to the aspect of deforestation. So don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. Welcome back. You're still watching on Rights, Crime and Justice, coming to you from Green Grid TV. And I've been speaking with John Obuaba from Ghana on the environmental issues and crimes, you know, and they're not just environmental crimes, they are crimes in plain sight happening in Ghana. So let's pick up on the conversation, John. I want to talk a bit on the issue of deforestation, which is a pressing concern, particularly in the northern region of Ghana. And this is apparently caused by the large amount of charcoal production. First of all, what do you think is the main driver behind this? Is it energy poverty or lack of alternatives, or is it just ignorance on the part of the people that are involved in these activities? And what exactly is the cause for this mass need to constantly produce charcoal and then thereby leading to a vicious cycle of, you know, deforestation?
Thank you very much. So the issue of deforestation in the north, in terms of charcoal production, is not an issue of energy poverty.
Okay.
Because all the charcoal that is produced in the north is transported to the southern part of the country. And we all know, and research has shown, that use of charcoal is detrimental to the health of the users. Government has tried to promote LPG gas as an alternative energy for domestic and commercial usage. But still, we still have a chunk of our population depending on charcoal. So when you go to the north, to the producers of charcoal in the north, that is resulting in the environmental degradation, is issue of poverty, livelihoods, income generation. So people go into charcoal production because they want money. It's a source of livelihood for people in the north. Because the northern part of Ghana poverty, there's high level of poverty, low educational, outcomes, issues of health, droughts, and these are conditions in the north. And so, there is unemployment, young people are not in school, and a whole lot of issues. So when people go into charcoal production, it is just basically because it's a source of livelihoods for the people. And they do this at the detriment of the environment, because that is what is readily available to them to tap into the vegetation. That's what is available. So they destroy it, burn charcoal, and all this charcoal is transported to the south. So it's an issue of livelihoods for the people in the north. And you see, it is compounding the issue of environmental degradation and issues of rainfall. And because the northeast is already, the northern part of Ghana is already drought. And as we speak right now, we should have the rains, but the rains are not coming because the environment is being polluted, destroyed. So it's an issue of livelihood for the people, basically in the north. Yeah.
Okay, so if you're saying it's an issue of livelihood, and looking at the fact that a significant number of these households rely on this for livelihood, how do you think we can cut back on deforestation without exacerbating poverty? Of course, we know it's not good for the environment or even the people in the environment. So how do you think we can balance this out to ensure that these people that actually need a source of livelihood, they don't just lose it and we just tell them, oh, it's bad for the environment, so don't do that, and then we leave them to keep suffering? How do you think this can be balanced out, especially on the part of the government? What needs to be done?
Thank you very much. So the issue of, you see, once you're trying to enforce environmental laws, you are likely to affect people who depend on natural resources as sources of livelihoods. And for issues of livelihoods, it's a life and death issue. Government must look at an integrated approach, more of an adaptation, where you are telling people to stop destroying the environment, and you are also providing an alternative livelihood for the people.
Yeah.
So an integrated approach. For instance, let's take agroforestry as an intervention for environmental protection. So you ask people to go into agroforestry, and they can benefit as livelihood. Because when people go into mango plantations, citrus plantations, cocoa plantations, they can benefit from the fruits or the outcome of those plantations. At the same time, these plantations, serves as an environmental, protection measure. So we don't just have to tell people to stop destroying the environment, but we must also look at how we buffer people in terms of livelihoods, alternative livelihood sources. So this is an integrated approach that government needs to use. And that, the fact that there is poverty and people are living in poverty, that's also, guarantee that the environment must be destroyed for livelihoods. So there must be some form of environmental law enforcement without losing sight of, adding some form of social protection, safety net for the rural communities that depend on those natural resources for their farming activities. And we also need to invest in education. Seriously, we need to invest in education. We need to invest in, creating awareness in these communities and let communities understand the implications of destroying the environment. Sometimes communities are ignorant of these things, because when the last tree died, the last man will die. When you are telling someone this, the person doesn't understand. But we need to scale down our education and bring it down to the local context for people to understand the implications of destroying the environment. Because issues of climate change is issues that when we are talking, people don't really associate. Because someone doesn't know how a tree causes rain or a tree protects the environment. So sometimes we speak jargons. Our policies are not grassroots rooted. Our policies are not citizen driven. We lose focus on, bringing down our policies to the grassroots for people to really understand what you are talking about. We are talking about environmental destruction and the implication on the climate. What are you talking about? So we owe citizens a lot of duty to let them understand our policies and what we really mean by these issues.
Yeah,
So
no,
that
that's
I think
absolutely right.
when you use a communal approach, an integrated communal driven approach, communities themselves will get to realize the implications of destroying the environment. And as an organization, as an NGO, one of our strategies we use in delivering our project is citizen-led approach. So citizens themselves get to appreciate that, wow, we are destroying our very future. Our next generation will not get any place to live. We need to take an action. And this is the approach that we need to use. And government institutions responsible for the environment must work collaboratively and use to, get the knowledge down to the grassroots communities. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much. And so we're wrapping up the conversation now, but before we close on this, I'm looking at all these few issues raised, and I know there's so much more, but of course we can't discuss everything on one program. So, but in all of this, how would you assess the Ghanaians' government commitment to environmental protection and, of course, sustainable development? Of course, like almost everything we've said leads to, oh, the government has to do this, the government has to do that, but so far, how well would you say the government has done? Can you, based on their policies, based on their actions and their responses, would you say that they are committed to actually protecting the environment and moving towards sustainable development in Ghana?
I think policy-wise, government is committed policy-wise. What government is trying to do best is enforcement of environmental laws in Ghana. And that is where we are missing. We have all the policies. In fact, Ghana has a climate change policy. And even the current government has a government appointee responsible for advising the government on climate change. So you can see clearly the commitment in terms of policy is there. But what we lack is the enforcement of environmental laws in the country. Our local government structure, where we have what we call the municipal and districts jurisdictions, are responsible for developing their own medium-term development plans. And per the guidelines of the National Development Planning Commission, an agency of government that is responsible to coordinate development interventions across all the local governance districts, gave a guideline that shows that every local government authority should prioritize climate change, and they should ensure that in their medium-term development plans, they have made provision for climate change, fight against climate change and climate change adaptation in the local government areas. But one thing we have also realized is that these local government authorities do not really pay attention to some of these things, and it is as a result of enforcement, because the provisions are clear that you need to make provision for climate change. In fact, the local government authorities need to have local committees responsible for fighting climate change. But all these things, we don't see them. So the greater of the problem is with how the enforcement is done. But in terms of policy-wise, government policy measures shows commitment to fighting climate change, but the problem is with the enforcement. So recommendations going forward will be the fact that we need to localize the fight against climate change and environmental pollution. We need to localize it. And we need to tax our local government authorities to prioritize all this. So within your jurisdiction, your local government authority jurisdiction, any environmental pollution that is going on there, you must be held responsible. That particular development authority must be held responsible for that, because you need to protect our water bodies, you need to protect our land, you need to protect the environment for the future generation, and which the sustainable development goals is talking about. And there must be financial commitment. They must make provision for funds for these interventions, and not just putting the interventions across. So I think this has been the commitment of government and the lapses around implementation of environmental laws in Ghana. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much. And as we wrap up the program, I just want to get your final thought, because a lot of these things you said, some of them have to do with the actions by the people in the communities themselves. So if you know where to speak to your people in Ghana, your fellow Ghanaians, and people in communities, what would you have to say to them to let them realize how important their actions are on the environment, and how much of an effect it actually has, not just on the environment, but indirectly on themselves as well? So just your final thoughts on, a word to your fellow Ghanaians in various communities.
Okay, thank you very much. For policymakers, we need to intensify education. We need to intensify enforcement of environmental laws. For we, rural communities, beneficiary communities, and households, we need to protect the environment, because the environment is what we depend on. And we cannot deplete the environment today. Then the next generation doesn't have anything to live on. So we need to protect our environment, because the environment is life. When we destroy the environment, we destroy our livelihood, we destroy our health, and we are gone. So we need to protect the environment. Anything we do that pollutes the environment, anything we do that destroy our water bodies, we must put a stop to it. And with that, we may be on the, as we speak right now in Ghana, the rains are not coming. And why the rains are not coming? It's because we are polluting the environment. That is why we are having unstable rainfall patterns. And now farmers are suffering. So we need to protect the environment. We need to make sure that activities that protect the environment must come to a halt. And I think it will be a safe place for us all to be. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, John. It's been a very wonderful conversation and a discussion. Thank you so much for joining on the conversation.
You're welcome.
All right, so what we've uncovered today is actually a reflection of deeper systemic failures and systems and symptoms of a larger crisis of neglect and putting profit above people. Like John has pointed out, these things are actually done by most of the people, some of the people in power rather. So, they're putting profit basically above the people. And the reality of it is that, we cannot afford to sacrifice the environment for short-term gains, because when the water is no longer drinkable and when the forests are gone and there's no amount of money or infrastructure that will save the planet or save us, even as human beings. So like I would always say, environmental protection is not a luxury activity, but it's a necessity for survival, and the time to act is now. That's a wrap on today's program, or on today's episode of On Rights, Crime and Justice. Many thanks for watching. I'm Tonio Gubanjo. It's bye for now.